Welcome into our nation's capital. Today is Inauguration Day, and Donald Trump is once again back in the White House. And joining me to break down this historic day is Blaze News Editor-in-Chief Matthew Peterson and our Blaze Senior Politics Editor, Chris Bedford. So you guys, it's the beginning of the golden era. That's what we've heard all day long. How has this day been for the two of you? You guys have been part of our Blaze coverage earlier today. This is such a huge day and a big swing.
Well, first of all, welcome to the swamp.
Thank you.
You are all my guests and my captives. This has been an absolutely phenomenal day, and it's so different. Matt and I have been talking about this all day. We got to watch it together, watch the inauguration speech together from AFPI earlier, and there's a really positive note to this. You can tell that Donald Trump has come a long, long way. As he said in an emotional moment in his speech, he kind of wasn't supposed to be here. It's amazing that he is. It's by the grace of God that he is. He's survived lawfare. He's survived the insanity of 2020. He's survived. We, as a country, have survived COVID. He went through the assassination attempt. He has emerged now so far removed from the political figure who he was when he came down the golden escalator. He's now one of the world's most credible politicians in a way. He's got so many credits around the world. People have finally woken up and realized that this is a moment has the approval, having known what they're buying, of the American people in the majority, not just winning the states there. And he goes out there and he didn't lay out a dark vision like he did in that excellent and necessary speech, American Carnage, at Inauguration 2017. He went out and he laid out a plan for the future. He spent all of 2020's campaign, I think much to his detriment, talking about all the things that were being done to him and all the forces that were arrayed against him. And they were. But people didn't vote for him in 2016 because of things people were trying to hurt him. They voted for him because of the vision he painted for the country. And this was a return to that in full and complete form. It was masterfully done. It was emotional. And it was cold.
It was a little cold here in D.C., but that's okay because it's such a historic day. And I look at it the way that you say it. When Donald Trump is standing in place of all of us, and he's not on his revenge tour, as they like to say, he is a much better orator. We know that he has the gift of gab. He can go out there and he can make you believe anything that he's out there saying.
Manifest destiny.
But when it's something that is going to
put
be...
the stars and stripes on Mars. I'm ready.
And Elon's back there cheering already. Everybody's so excited.
Richest man in the world is fanboying in the background going, yeah.
Yes. All right. So was that your takeaway? What was your biggest moment then of the Donald Trump speech?
Well, before biggest moment, I think just going back to what Chris said, Donald Trump wasn't supposed to be here because he was a fool. He was a stooge. He wasn't astute. He wasn't a real politician. Donald Trump wasn't supposed to be here because he was a Russian asset. Ivy League degrees were front page of New York magazines with crazy charts showing us he was a Russian asset. It's a conspiracy. He was there to destroy America. He was destroying America's norms. He wasn't supposed to be there because Donald Trump was an extremist, because Donald Trump was a fascist, because Donald Trump was a racist. He wasn't supposed to be there because he is literally Hitler, as we've heard for a long time. Donald Trump wasn't supposed to be there because he needed to be impeached, because he pointed out something about what was going on in Ukraine with the Bidens that was illegal to talk about.
The Hunter Biden crime family.
Yeah, well,
now pardoned.
I mean, you couldn't mention this. Asking about it was a problem. Donald Trump wasn't supposed to be there because not once but twice someone tried to murder him in public. So to see this happen today, something that was not necessary, something that will be considered inevitable from now onto forever in the history books, knowing and having lived through, as all of us have and all of you in the audience have, knowing that a year or two ago this seemed impossible, seeing America at really its darkest, every major institution in this country and in the world being opposed to him, and watching him today in the Capitol saying what he said, calling out who he called out in that small room, and then talking about how this is not a dark time. This is going to be the golden age and America's decline is over. This is a great day to be an American. It's a great day to be alive.
So, Chris, you mentioned that as well, just the different tone in Donald Trump's speech. How is this administration this time around going to be different than the first one?
Well, there's a couple major differences they have here. One's experience. When Donald Trump came to office, there was no intellectual backing for MAGA. It really hadn't taken form. There were people. You were involved closely with this at Claremont. Basically, that was it. There was the Heritage Foundation. Well, Jim DeMint, who is hosting us here today, was trying to steer that ship in the right direction. That's like turning around an oil tanker. The Heritage Foundation itself was like still largely a CIA asset, not really going in the right direction. AEI is definitely not going to come out there. Brookings is not producing MAGA
No one
stuff.
even talks about AEI anymore as like right-leaning anything.
They've been useless for decades. Cato, of course, was still in the conversation, but they weren't going to produce anyone. And all you had to check of who was on Donald Trump's side was their Twitter history. And as Shane Gillis hysterically points out, even your MAGA dad at first was like, get this joker off the stage. People didn't understand who Trump was. Very few people. Ann Coulter was one, but very few people really were Donald Trump supporters from the very beginning. And they were ambushed. They didn't realize, I didn't realize, I don't think anyone realized just how much was going to be brought against him. I mean, whether or not the deep state existed was something you were called a conspiracy theorist if you said the deep state was trying to hurt Donald Trump in 2017 amongst people who were in conservative media. So now all of that's gone. Everything's been exposed, and it's actually been a blessing. The time in the wilderness sharpened them so much that the different organizations that have been incubating white papers and talent are coming in. The staff who he's brought in, the nominees are actually on his side. He never talked to Rex Tillerson when he actually gave him the job. He just looked great. He was in charge of an oil and gas company. Donald Trump didn't realize that ExxonMobil is actually not on the good guy's side at all. But he thought that this guy would be good. He wasn't. He was undermined everywhere he went. The executive orders that he issued were not followed because they're just glorified press releases unless you have someone willing to execute on them judiciously, while stopping all efforts from inside your own organization to stop it. And another thing, his first administration had a lot of his priorities that really required the legislature. They wanted to build a wall, a new project. They wanted to repeal Obamacare, something that required the legislature. Now which was not an aside, and still kind of isn't. The Senate is still really cool to Donald Trump. Now he doesn't need that. He needs like $160, $180 billion for the deportation program. He needs it up front, and that's really all he's asking them for. Everything else is going to be done through the executive branch, reforming the executive. Congress has refused to oversee what goes on in the administration, so he's going to do that, and that frees him up a lot.
And we see Trump versus the deep state. It's going to be a battle that continues to play out over his next 4 years. And Matthew, that's something that we're going to be diving into here.
Yeah, you could say diving into, you could say that is going to be the focus of what we do when it comes to politics at Blaze News for the next 4 years, God willing, because right now, when you look at what has just occurred on this historic day, you realize that the real battle that we face, the real battle that all Americans are interested in now who are concerned for their country, is not between Republicans and Democrats. It's between the Trump administration and the administrative state. It's whether or not, after decades of every Republican president failing to roll back this thing that has become increasingly tyrannical, and it's the administrative state, it's the NGOs, it's the Ivy League institutions, right? They all think in one way. And Donald Trump today, after the greatest comeback in political history, has taken office with a historic mandate. You know, you can talk about how close the country is and how it's divided, but this was a mandate. This was winning the popular vote. This was winning in the so-called swing states, and they're swinging no more. It's happened culturally and in every other way. So the question now, the existential question that this country faces and that everyone in our audience is most interested in is, can Donald Trump do what no Republican president has ever done and roll back the administrative state and the fourth branch of government? And we're going to focus on that. And we're going to focus on it in order to keep ourselves reminded of this and to keep the perspective for our audience and what you are all concerned with. We're going to call it the mandate. This is going to be Blaze News tonight, the mandate. Blaze News is going to have a daily show called The Mandate. We're going to focus on that. We'll still have other content about, other stuff going on. But what Chris is doing in D.C. And Rebeka and, a growing team, what we're going to do in politics is rigorously focus on this battle, because everything that people are debating in politics revolves ultimately on whether we can reform the federal government.
I can't wait. I mean, this is really the actual battle that we're fighting. Matt's completely correct, and you see it everywhere. It's not just. I mean, Joe Biden just essentially released over the last few weeks a list of the top deep state generals and his pardons and his blanket pardons. By the way, no one is
Wait a
even
minute, the top
prosecuting him.
deep state generals, like
Some of the celebrity figures for the deep state.
I saw a post on X and they said, oh, if you didn't know who the deep state was, they all got pardoned today. That's the list of the deep
Yes.
state.
But they go way down.
It is. It's much more.
And it's not even like a machine.
That's
It's
exactly
not
right.
like someone's
Than that.
pressing buttons and pulling levers and
Right.
saying execute order 66. It's an organism that breathes on its own. The heartbeats, people know what to do. They know what to slow down. They know what to not let happen. It's like the ad of someone saying, slow down, young man, this is the post office. They know to make certain things move. Certain things never happen at all. They know to protect each other. They know to watch each other's back. And they know to stop Donald Trump. And for all of what we've experienced over the last 8 years, you look at things like NewsGuard that have been set up to police content, to police children's education. You think that it's about right and left. They muddy the waters with these things about gay rights and abortion and taxation, but that's not what it's about. It's about whether or not you're challenging the global liberal order, which is why you end up with former Secretary Generals of NATO, which is why you end up with the first Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security on the board, which is why you end up with people from the World Economic Forum and the World Bank on the board of this thing that checks news. It's not about right versus left. It's about challenging their consensus that they defend, and that's really the next mission of 4, honestly, hopefully, 12 years.
Yeah, exactly. Did I say 4? We're going to manifest 12. Isn't that
That's
what they
right.
say? These libs. I felt like Kamala, by the way, while she was listening to the prayers and the music today. You could see the demons, like, trembling.
That was a hangover.
But she, yeah, maybe
Withdrawal.
so. Maybe so. I felt like she was trying to, like, she wasn't praying, but she was trying to manifest something, standing against this. This is really important, though. And what's significant here is that everyone knows, if you're listening to me right now, you know how things have gone wrong in America. And you know how historic this day is. But what I think all of us, most normal people, don't know is how exactly are we being ruled and by whom? Who are the people who are actually in charge? When we say a deep state, right? We say administrative state. We say the fourth branch of government. We say these shadowy NGOs, right? How are people like Fauci, et cetera, how are they in charge? Who is really in charge? This is a question that, and let me tell you, this is not a joke. I mean, listen to me closely. People who are, centimillionaires, billionaires, people who are really, really, really smart, they have the same question as every normal American because it's opaque. No one can see what happens here. What's been revealed is we don't know who rules us and how. And that's what goes to what Chris was saying about the new Trump administration. If you see this weird architecture of whatever this thing is that's in charge in America and the federal government has been warped into, you realize you can't even unscrew it, or I'm trying to censor my language. I'm just going to tell you that we're all celebrating right now, and you're celebrating with us. So we should give that proviso. In order to straighten this out, you have to understand how twisted everything's become. And I think we're all going to be on a journey in the next year, and it's going to start with the first 90 days. We're going to evaluate the success of the mandate in the first 90 days. We're going to focus on what Trump is doing in the first 90 days and the administration. We're going to talk about his agenda and what he's trying to accomplish, and we're going to expose to you and shine a spotlight on the good guys and the bad guys and the players in that world. And what's most important, what both, elites and regular people want to know is who does rule us and how? What does this structure look like, and how do we need to reform it? The only thing that matters, I think, and for the most engaged audience in America, is taking that mandate that the American people just gave Trump and focusing on it actually achieving its ends.
Yes.
And I don't say this as some like namby-pamby, like, do good, we're going to reform government, everything's going to be fine. Like, politics is a dirty art. But what Chris is saying about this administration being better is that the people coming in know, right, the landscape. And how
You know what we're up
twisted it
against.
is.
You're not going to be tricked again either.
And what we're going to be able to do is pull back the curtain, because you guys know everybody that is going to be in the administration, the guys that actually know what they're doing, and the women that know what they're doing this time around. And we're not naive. We know this is going to be a difficult battle. But that's also why somebody has to shine the spotlight on it to make sure that it continues to get done every single day, because this is our one window in time that we have to reform the federal government. So we are going to go through and look at the mandate every single day. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more here from our nation's capital. And Steve Baker, he has one simple request from Donald Trump. We'll tell you about that coming up next. But go ahead and look at this. Is a fresh time. It's a fresh start, right? We have Donald Trump is in office now. So you might be thinking 2025, I have different goals in my life. I want to get healthy. Well, maybe one of your goals is actually to be financially free, to get out of debt. Well, make this the year that you try and actually get out of debt and stop getting crushed by all of the debt that's out there. Make your first step to go to PDS Debt. It's your personalized debt solution. And if you're making payments every month and it's not going anywhere, you can't get that down to the principal, PDS has a solution for you. For everyone with over $10,000 or more, you have eligibility with a debt that qualifies. There's no minimum credit score required. Bad and fair credit are accepted. Make this the year that you take control of your debt. Get free debt analysis right now at pdsdebt.com/Jill. It only takes 30 seconds. That's pdsdebt.com/Jill. One of Donald Trump's campaign promises was to pardon all of the nonviolent offenders on January 6th. And one of those is here with us right now, Steve Baker. He is our Blaze News investigative journalist who just happened to be a journalist who was walking through the Capitol on that fateful day. So, of course, this is now a very big day for you. How has this been? I mean, we have, let's just go ahead and tell everybody the champagne is out on the table right now. So what is today like for you?
It's emotional, but it's still not closure yet for me. I'm gonna need a few days to process this. You can't get rid of 4 years of having the chains of a weaponized Department of Justice around your neck, and just celebrate. And yes, I'm going to celebrate. I'm going to celebrate not just my own pardon, but I'm excited about what we're learning from the inside is what is coming. That so many people, we're talking about 1,600 defendants, and so many of those that are in prison right now are there absolutely not because of crimes they committed, but because of the weaponization of the Biden DOJ. And as a result of that, they've had hyperinflated charges, hyperinflated prosecution, and hyperinflated sentences. And that is what I'm excited to see is these guys and gals getting to come home.
Let me say, Jason Whitlock says this at Blaze a lot, and Jason's interesting because he's one of the many Blaze hosts he has never voted in an election before, voted in this one in part because of what happened on January 6th. Why did he do that? Because he sees what I think a lot of people see, and that is the tragedy of what happened when, again, a political expression of speech went awry, but in the wrong direction. And it could go way further in the other direction, right? And everyone's punished. We all know there were bad people on January 6th, some not good things. And that injustice is something that is very important, very soul essence of America, because free political speech, free political expression is necessary for the Republican form of government. Okay, this is why we're not going to get over this, and that means that, and I'm saying this tonight because we're partying, we're having a great time, and it's really important. So many people on the right in media over the last 4 years have said to me and many other people over and over again, right up until the last few weeks, January 6th is not important. No one cares anymore. January 6th is something that, it's over. It's not something we need to talk about anymore. At Blaze Media, we're not done talking about it, after the pardons, because all these stories are going to be told just like the left would do, because they understand the principles at stake. We're not done. Just today, right? Joe Hanneman wrote a piece about an egregious, insane thing that happened where you got a guy who's an upstanding individual, upstanding American citizen who's in jail for 6 years. We're not done with this. We reject the idea that everyone's over January 6th because the principle of the thing is so important. And that's where like Steve's story, and I also feel a little responsible for your story because by hiring you, I think we made them actually throw this down.
You took a big risk.
Yeah, but I take risks. I'm a risk taker, but I think for the company as a whole, that's a big deal, and I think it testifies to what Glenn Beck and other people are made of. The important thing is that this is not something that just disappears tomorrow. This principle, right, and the principle that has been violated, is something that rubs against the very heart of the American regime. We're not going to stop with these stories.
And I'm not interested in doing the whole kind of classic Republican thing of, well, you can't weaponize government. It's absolutely nuts to that. Bad agents are only reformed by force at this point. They're not going to apologize. So that those blanket immunities and pardons that have been given by Donald Trump, great. That means you can't plead the fifth. That means you've got no way out. You're going to be hauled in, and you're going to testify. And just because the Democrats have set this precedent in modern history, recent history, you will be arrested if you're in contempt of Congress, and you will be put in prison. You will answer these questions, and you'll
play
do
that game? Let's play it.
exactly what Democrats did, which is friends of mine, accountants who were sitting in their offices, people who were stuck in there at the RNC, for example, by a pipe bomb that somebody put there. Ended up being hauled in front of Inquisition committees that went through their papers, went through their texts, went through their emails. Everything was laid open to these for partisan attacks, and there are a lot of great people who are innocent people who are rotting in prison, people whose lives have been turned upside down like you. And I'm sorry, it's over. Here's a pardon. It's not going to cut it.
Well, I will tell you, starting with what you said, Matt, is that Jason Whitlock came to the conclusion he came to because he's intellectually honest. And I will tell you that I speak to MSM journalists almost every day.
Oh, by the way, he does. I don't know, Jill, Chris, if you know this, but we should all just reveal this now to the public. This guy is so insane and so like rigorous in his investigations that he talks to mainstream. He talks to legacy journalists. When I tell him that guy's not on your side, Steve, like he works for the deep state, he works for the agencies. But Steve still talks to all those people and more because, anyway, go on.
But you know what? When I'm here in D.C. with them, and we're either having lunch together or we're having coffee or we're at a beer, having a beer together at night with these guys, they will be much more honest and they will talk about the fact that the DOJ actually overreached on this. They know it because they covered all the other events that took place in 2020, the riots that took place on January 20th, 2017,
where
the first inauguration.
Charges were dropped on all those people.
Where charges were dropped, where the D.C. juries were either hung or they acquitted everyone, and then the DOJ reacted in such a way that they dropped the rest of the charges. They see those comparisons and those examples, and they can't help but come to the intellectually honest conclusion that what has happened to the January 6th defendants, even the most egregious of them, they have been overcharged, over-prosecuted, over-sentenced, and something needs to happen. That's why I don't think we're not going to see a riot in the streets about the pardons and the commutations that are coming of even the most violent, even what people consider to be the most egregious of the January 6th defendants, because we all know in the back of our mind, even if we're insanely partisan, that this was an overreach.
Call it time served for those, right?
Yeah.
Yep,
That's right.
Absolutely. It has been years. They absolutely deserve to move on with their lives and not have this hanging over their heads anymore. Now, we've been talking about some of the things that Donald Trump did in his first moments in office. Let's go ahead and look at what Joe Biden did with some of his last moments in office, because he dropped some pardons for Anthony Fauci, General Mark Milley, some of the Capitol Police that testified before Congress for the J6ers, and a lot of members of his own family, Steve.
not only as members of his own, Biden crime family syndicate, but also the pardons for all of the J6 Select Committee members and their staffers. He went deep. Now, I'm assuming they're going to have to name names, but I spent time today reading the language of all these pardons. And the one thing, particularly with the United States Capitol Police and Metropolitan Police officers who testified before those committees, the one thing that he did was they were very narrow in their language. It only pertains to what they did and said and their actions related to the committee itself, which means my first gut reaction about Officer Harry Dunn being pardoned was, oh, I was so angry. And then I read the actual language of the pardon. And I went, wait a minute. He's still open. And I'm telling you,
Yeah.
before congressional committee, we're going to get him.
So yeah, there's off the record things that Steve is referring to. I mean, we live in a second Christmas today, but this is a second Christmas, and it's a great thing. But what you're talking about is the fact that they went out of their way to say it's only what they said to the committee,
Correct.
and that we're pardoning, and that's even more damning. First off, all of this is damning. Right. As Chris Bedford said earlier, right? I mean, it's all damning. We're going to pardon all these people preemptively because they didn't do anything wrong. Okay.
Brave public servants.
Yes, great people. So that's number one. But number two is, it's only what they said to the J6 committee, as if to say, we're not going to go out of our way to actually try to defend what some of these Capitol police officers and other people did. So again, we're not done. I mean, this is just the beginning now, right? Of real reconciliation, as they say.
Yeah,
The last word,
the alleged pardons for these officers, the pardons for Mark Milley, these are stories that we all have in process. We're not even close to being finished with yet. They're still coming. And the pardons are not expansive enough to cover them because, as you've talked about earlier, even today on Beck's show, their Fifth Amendment rights are waived now. They're gone. But you put them in front of a committee in Congress, hold their hand up, take the oath. They get an opportunity to perjure themselves yet again.
And we will be there watching it.
Yes,
Steve,
we will.
enjoy that champagne.
Thank
You've
you.
definitely earned it. Everybody here is very excited for you on
Thank
this
you.
day. Don't go anywhere, because wherever Donald Trump goes, protests follow. Julio Rosas will join us to tell us all about today's events next. Over the weekend, the people were taking to the streets for the People's March, as they wanted to call it, for Donald Trump in his second term here in Washington, D.C. Julio Rosas was back out in the streets. It's been cold today, so we really appreciate him going out there. He's our Blaze Media national correspondent. And so, Julio, just break down what you saw out there on the streets of D.C. today.
So, it's interesting because, I mean, I've been covering protests in the D.C. area for quite some time. And this one, it felt different. I mean, that's kind of like what's to be expected, right? Not only for the change on the positive side, but like kind of the change on the negative side. And the reason why I say it felt different is because there was actually a lot of bashing on the Biden-Harris administration, right? Because of the quote-unquote genocide in Gaza. They're still obviously very upset about that. And so for them, they said, there wasn't that much of a change. They're still the Zionists, still in control. We still need to organize and all this and all that. And they did kind of call for more confrontations now that Trump's in office because, they really see him as the boogeyman. So I think moving forward, we are going to see that shift. Instead of Palestine and Gaza, I think now we're going to see the immigration side. They're no human beings illegal, refugees are welcome here, and all that. But I think again, unlike the first time, they're really going to face the opposition from the American public because the majority do support mass deportations. The majority do support a lot of things that Trump's promising on doing.
Did you cover the 2017 riots here on Inauguration Day?
I wish.
So I got stuck in them, and it was very different. I mean, they were stopping cars, they were attacking, automobiles were being lit on fire in the streets. The cops didn't know what to do. And for all those people who in our company who are going to the galas tonight, I got news to you. Coming out of these things into the freezing cold at midnight, wearing a tuxedo and the girls in heels meant you had to run from mobs of people who were just running through the streets like it was like you're in Iraq. And it was a disaster.
And I don't think it was going to happen this time. I mean,
No, me neither.
there's a video of Tucker walking near the White House, just like without any security, like it's just him, and everyone's like cheering him on. And like even as far back as like 2020, that would not have happened.
So let's talk about that a little bit more, because this is pivotal. It's pivotal. It's a moment that we need to take stock of. 2017, I think what Chris said is important, because I don't think most people understand the violence, as you said.
Just
at that
casually
time.
visited.
Yes, and all those people were let go.
Yeah.
So this is the time where this wasn't just, some people in the streets with signs, and I love communism or something like this. This was the first indication that something had changed after Trump won in 2016, and it alarmed me, but it was memory hold very quickly, and now we get to the point where, in the greatest comeback in living political memory, Trump wins, and what Julio, what you're telling us today is there really wasn't anything going on.
No, and it was.
It is cold.
Well, I mean, I think the cold did have something to do with it. Don't get me wrong, but they wanted. So, to give an example, they wanted to march on the White House.
Yeah.
And DC police were saying, no, you're not going to be able to get to the White House. And then they even, on top of that, they said, well, there's even also military checkpoints because the National Guard is out. They said, and we have no jurisdiction over them. And let me tell you, they're not going to let you get through either. I mean,
Did you at least get to see the great DC tradition of wealthy white women screaming that black police officers are racist? I've seen it so many times. It's
no, that
so
was
weird.
That was Saturday.
That was Saturday?
That was Saturday. That was like the Boomer Gen X march. But even then, even that one, that turnout was much lower than it was in 2017.
But Julio, let's not undersell this, because it's not every day that you see a guillotine around, and there was one out there.
Actually,
there was a MAGA guillotine. Yeah,
Chris was born near the guillotine. He was raised by
to
the
your point,
guillotine.
Jill, like you are correct. I mean, it is right now. It is kind of easy to mock them and belittle them because they deserve it. But even if 80% support mass deportations, that 20% could still be dangerous. I mean, today one of the speakers said that we're going to bring the fight to Trump. If they have an event, we're going to smash it. Like if they're going to pick a fight with us, we're going to we're going to fight back. So it might not be kind of like what we saw in 2020, where there's hundreds of thousands of people, but someone you only
that's when
need
you'll see the pictures.
you only need like 100 people to kind of cause kind of that chaos.
And that's when you'll see the chaos.
Yes.
I mean, the country could barely take seeing one picture of Elian Gonzalez being deported by, I think, the Clinton administration.
Right.
They couldn't. That shattered the earth. CNN is already airing video of crying foreigners in foreign countries.
They're trying to put that out there right now to say, oh, this will sway people again, right? But now you see people with the CB1 app, and it's turned off, and they're all crying because, oh no, Donald Trump, he's not going to let us in. What are we going to do?
Right.
But
gotta go
I don't
back.
think it's going to work this time.
Well, it's not going to work on that, but it is going to work when you see footage at night of these raids, when you see children crying. Parents out there who have kids that are at those age, when you see children crying and moms being pulled away, which, by the way, is what happens. If I steal your car, I am getting family separated from my son. He's going to cry if you want to bring a CNN camera by. I'm going to prison, and he's not coming with me. I don't get to bring my family with me to prison because I broke the law.
Yeah.
But for some reason, this is considered a different thing by the American people. But you can, pictures and video can really move people. Remember that time Ivanka Trump tried to start a war in Syria because of sad pictures? This stuff actually does pull on the heartstrings of humans.
That's true, and so this is where, Julio, you're going to come in the clutch. I mean, it's a weird thing that's going to happen in the next few years, which is the war is not necessarily going to be documenting the crazy BLM rioters, right?
No.
The war is going to be visually about what's going on when it comes to getting rid of millions of people who should not be here, who are here. And I think we all know what Chris said is true. Right now, Americans are very much in support of mass deportation. Right now in America, the majority of people understand what has happened in the last few years, and they want mass deportation. Every day that goes by, from here on out, it's already begun, as they were just saying. The mainstream media is going to show, legacy media is going to show images and videos of all these people who are, you can be empathetic towards, and oh my gosh, they're getting rid of them and whatever. And we all know that's going to happen. I think, like Jill said, something has changed in the spirit of Americans, right? At least a lot of people. But I would suspect, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, the imagery war, right, about who shoots what video and from what angles is going to become very important here.
Right, and that's why it's important that we'll be I'm still working out the final details, but the plan is to be on those raids with ICE. We will finally, after 4 years after being iced out, we'll be
Well done.
We'll be with
Well done.
Border Patrol and
Well
ICE.
done.
And that's
Inauguration day, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
But yeah,
Iced out, Julio
it's important,
Rosas.
right? It's important because this is. I mean, I was telling Glenn this morning. This was an issue that Trump won on. This was number 2 or number 3, right behind the economy, which was also being affected by this massive self-inflicted problem. So, I think Trump is really gonna. I don't think he's gonna waver on it. And obviously with that, him following through on that, yeah, maybe people who were kind of just ambivalent about today, maybe they'll finally get off the couch and say, you know what, yeah, I'm going to go out and protest outside of to protect the migrants at my local migrant shelter, because now, like New York City, you throw a stick and you'll hit one.
But they've also, just while Trump has gained so much credibility over the last 8 years, the left-wing protest movement has lost so much credibility.
That is true.
The pictures I saw in D.C. in 2017 at the Women's March, which, by the way, was so big because of everyone here who's stuck in D.C. right now with the canceled inauguration knows the pain of non-refundable airplane tickets and non-refundable hotels. All the girl bosses who brought their daughters from the upper middle class and the wealthy class to Hillary Clinton's inauguration couldn't cancel their tickets. So we had the Women's March. And that stuff, the Linda Saracen stuff, the BLM stuff, it is so discredited at this point that I think they're going to have a difficult time reinvigorating the Occupy Wall Street, Linda Saracen, or whatever her name is, Women's March.
Oh, Linda Sarsour?
Linda Sarsour. Pink hats. Yeah, Saracen.
Yeah.
Like he said, whatever her name is.
Yeah.
Pink hat
Saracen.
stuff.
Spiritually accurate.
It's going to be... that's lost credibility. It not only did not do anything, but it's so corrupt. I mean, one of the founders of BLM just lost 2 mansions in the LA fires.
Yeah, 2 out of the 3 mansions that
discredited.
she had. It's, single tear shed for her. But Julio, we know you're going to be out there on the border. We look forward to you covering the stories. And you know what? If it's going to be out there, AOC is also going to be out there just trying to shed those tears. We have to have
She'll finally find the border again after 4 years.
all of those days have gone by. She'll finally figure out where it is again. But we'll look forward to you
Oh, wait.
joining.
Ladies and gentlemen, like Julio has been out in some cold weather all day. I'll give him some northern climes props. It has been cold.
It has been.
I do not blame Trump at all for moving it in. It was awful.
Do you blame global warming?
It was funny. They did mention that too. They're saying climate change is still a thing despite it being cold today. They actually did mention that.
They're amazing.
It's pretty
They
funny.
won't stop. No shame.
No shame.
Shameless.
Julio, we're going to catch up with you soon, I'm sure. Don't go anywhere, because when we come back, is this mandate heaven sent? Our next guest will tell us how it's one nation under God. Next. Well, it has been a historic day, and Blaze reporter, she's here in D.C., Rebeka Zeljko. I've been spending the entire day with Rebeka. She's been my nice tour guide here in D.C. Bedford was off with Peterson. They were doing the cool things over across town.
feel like I'm being
And
attacked.
Rebeka was kind enough to show me around here and get us going.
Our awesome office.
It
Yes.
is an awesome office, which I should mention. We started the day, I did a Starbucks pickup order where I called Rebeka, which I was like, okay, I have my coffee, we're ready to go. Oh, that's John Fetterman that I'm looking at. He's right there in the Starbucks. And I turned my head over and I said, oh, that's Lectern guy right next to him. I said, what a way to start out inauguration day here in D.C.
All the Disney characters are out.
Oh,
Truly. This is Trump's America after all.
So what was your big takeaway from the speech then today, right? As we've been talking about, Bedford was saying this is a much different tone than we saw from Donald Trump in his first inaugural address. What did you see?
I think I saw a lot of the themes that have kind of been repeated leading up to the actual inauguration day, which is just this golden era, this attitude of optimism. He spoke a lot about, eliminating a lot of those cultural issues that people overwhelmingly rejected on November 5th, which is, I think, one of the reasons he won overwhelmingly. Getting rid of the DEI stuff in federal programs was a big one. And then there were a lot of really humanizing moments, I thought, not just during the inaugural speech, but also leading up throughout the election. Most notably today, they spoke about, the Reverend was mentioning, how his parents were watching over him from heaven and protecting him. And you saw this, kind
so
of
strange.
emotional moment, which was really unusual for this guy who's pretty much always
Yes.
kind of a
Yes.
comedic figure on television. And so that was really touching. And of course, during the speech, he also mentioned that he felt that God protected him and saved his life that day, which was, just as touching, which I thought was it was a great sight to see today. It was a good
He's a
start.
changed man.
I'm gonna
For
say,
sure.
Rebecca, I don't know how many national pundits have talked about this today, but to me, with many, thoughts about Trump over the years showing emotion, the emotion on his face when he talked about that preacher talked about his parents, that was unbelievable. Like you could tell, something had happened there where he was deeply moved, no question about it, in that moment. And then what you point out with the line about, I was saved by God. I mean, we know all the libs are like, heads are exploding about this, Christian nationalism. But the way in which Trump said it, and I'm wary of this stuff. Like, politicians are to me like you tell them what to do if you're in power. Otherwise, they're terrible people. The way that he said that was incredibly serious for Trump. And then to have like someone say to your parents are watching above you and see the emotion on his face, I just think like I hope other people understand the point you're making, because it was one of the takeaways of the day for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think you talked about how this is in one part just such a rejection of all the different things the left has pushed? I got a notification, like I was reading through, okay, I just see the inauguration coverage at 5:30 in the morning. I had a notification from the New York Times. Facial hair, the last frontier in women's beauty. And it makes me think, I don't know if they're quite understanding the level of rejection that is going on here. And I guarantee you, had Kamala Harris won, we would have been subjected to bearded ladies. Like a medieval circus would have absolutely been up there. The performances, the art. Oh, it would have gotten ugly. What did you think about okay, you're a youth. What about the kids?
Youth.
I mean, even the artists that I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe they got Snoop Dogg.
Yes.
Like he's kind of before my time. I mean, so to you, was this like how I felt when I saw Fleetwood Mac playing? Like, what are these people doing on the stage? Are these relevant artists that are actually interesting
Carrie
too?
Underwood,
Snoop Dogg, and Nelly. Are you excited? Are you pumped?
I will say I got the email notification that Nelly was performing, and my roommate was far more excited than I am. I'll admit I don't know many of his greatest hits, but I think to your point, Trump has kind of always been a cultural figure, which is why I think a lot of these people have sort of gravitated towards him, especially as he's become more and more popular. And so, Carrie Underwood, I mean, she really stole the show. That was great. And,
The Marine Corps band didn't show up, or the recording guy.
Not the
Oh,
recording.
right.
Couldn't press play on that.
that was the moment of the day.
She goes, I can just sing it, guys. It's fine. Now,
she took it away.
Rebecca walked me through DC today so kindly, so I can walk you through Nelly's greatest hits tonight. That can be how I return the favor tonight, because let me tell you, they are some of the top of the top. He has
what I
the
hear.
bangers there from my high school and college days. So it's going to be a great time tonight when Nelly performs.
And
I
you two are
promise
going
you
to
that.
the balls?
We are. We're
We're going to
both
the bar,
going to be
but when
there.
Antifa comes for you, call us. We'll pick you up.
Okay.
We'll get you.
Yeah, at the end we'll come through.
I'll
Little
share my
security.
location so you know where exactly where to come pick us up.
Little security at the end. That's fine.
But Rebecca is going to be a part of the show when we have the mandate. You're here on Capitol Hill. You cover Congress for us. So what do you expect to see with everything that's going on, right? It's going to be one bill versus two bills. It's such a slim majority now in the House. There's so many things that we have to look forward to. What sticks out to you?
Well, I think one of the things that Trump has reiterated leading up to his inauguration is that he wants these first 100 days to really be exemplary of this mandate that he's been campaigning on and who's eventually elected for. And so because Republicans have such a narrow majority in the House, we have a pretty comfortable majority in the Senate, but in the House it's a bit trickier, especially trickier now that Mike Waltz from Florida resigned today to fill that national security post that he was nominated for a couple months ago. But the point being, those 100 days, if you really want to make it, very mandate forward, if you will, you're going to have to focus on legislation that will be realistic to pass the House. So one of those bills, for example, was the Lake and Riley Act, most recently had a lot of success through the House. It had previously passed with bipartisan support, and this time even more so, which I think just goes to show that the Overton window is shifting, and Democrats are realizing that if they, want to survive politically, they're going to have to stop talking about bearded ladies, and they're going to have to get serious about legislation.
Deportation's back.
Exactly. Deportation, it's
So
back.
back.
It's so back. And the Lake and Riley Act is a great example of that. I think those first 100 days will be pivotal and will be focused on legislation that will just be easy wins for the Trump administration.
This is in the 8 years. I mean, 8 years ago, I remember Donald Trump was pilloried for saying somebody's doing the raping when they were asking about deportations. Fast forward 8 years, the Democrats like deport the rapists, but not even all of them. I think a majority of the Democrats voted against deporting the rapists.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah, I will say, even though it passed bipartisan, there was still overwhelming opposition from Democrats.
Amazing.
So, classic. Same thing with the Women in Sports Act. I mean, it's one of those things that might be common sense legislation to some of us, but with a lot of Democrats, they just couldn't get behind it.
I look at this, and I loved part of Trump's speech today when he said, it's a revolution of common sense, right? Like, it should just come back to it. And when he's out there, DEI policies aren't going to matter anymore. There are just two genders, you guys. So many different things that are just common sense. It's just inherently known. We're going to get back to that, but we're also going to be in the weeds fighting all these different battles. What are you looking forward to when it comes to some of these big battles that are coming up?
I mean, to your point, I think a lot of this election season and just this new political era has been defined by vibes. And the vibes are shifting. The vibe shift is it's palpable on the ground. I mean, in DC, even the amount of people that I've seen just out and about wearing their MAGA hats is it's something that I would have considered pretty odd, just even 4 years ago. And today, I think Julio mentioned this, the video of Tucker Carlson just walking around DC, getting, support from just random strangers.
You couldn't do that in a normal day 2 years ago.
Right, and now
He had to move.
in DC of all places, you're seeing this happen. And I mean, there's bars that are overflowing with Trump supporters watching the inauguration. I think it's totally there's a total vibe shift going on.
There's a total vibe shift. There's a total mandate. We are going to be down here breaking it all down in Washington, D.C. for another day here. It's going to be an interesting time tonight. The Liberty Ball, Rebeka and I will be there. We'll report on how it all is. I'm sure that Bedford and Peterson will have the bar update.
We're having our
for
own
you
Liberty
as
Ball
well.
tonight.
Who are you wearing?
I'm wearing beer, and so are you.
Tommy Hilfiger.
We are going to go out and celebrate tonight in our own
Yes.
way. In our own way.
And that's a unique way that only those
no,
two
it's not a
men
UK. We're not
can
going to go.
do.
We're not going on this fancy.
That's
Jill and
okay.
Rebeka are going to go
Hey.
to the ball. Chris and I are just going to go out and celebrate
Either
America.
way, we're all going to break it down back here for you tomorrow. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. We'll see you back here tomorrow.